Welcome back to Gen Z Speaks. We're back with another episode. With me today, my usual co-hosts, the future of real estate, the soon-to-be real estate tycoon, Matthew Gutierrez. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, brother?
Good, man. Good, man. Hanging in there. And last but not least, the future of Intel, Jenish. Thank you. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man.
It's been a great start to the week. We just came back from Zion, visited all throughout the park. It's a beautiful place. What did you guys think of the place?
Go ahead, Jenish. You could.
I mean, the view was like, I think that's the greatest view I've seen in my life. Zion National Park. It was awesome. Pretty hot, but it was really awesome.
Yeah, I think it was pretty dope. I think like I told you guys, like I think the biggest comparison to there and like the Grand Canyon is that there's a lot of red rock, but I think the big difference is like the dysmorphia with Zion compared to like the Grand Canyon, where Grand Canyon everything looks just very like symmetrical and two picture perfect. Where like it's a little off in Zion, which is nice, very aesthetic. It's pretty cool.
It's so weird, man. When we went there, there's like a light green colored mountains with trees, and then there's a dark green.
Right.
There's like a place with desert and no trees at all. Then you go like a couple miles and there's like it's like kind of looks like a forest almost, but it's really interesting, man. And yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's probably one of the best views that I've ever seen. Go ahead.
Yeah, like Ibrahim was saying, it's funny. There's like one side, like literally like you could see rain on one side and then it's sunny on the other side. It's like crazy. I don't know.
Pretty beautiful.
And I never knew it's only 6 hours away from LA. I mean, 7 hours if you don't stop, but it took us a while to get there. But it's not as far away from LA as I thought it'd be.
No, it wasn't bad. It was just bad because of traffic. We left on a Friday.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's just dive right in. Let's get started. Oh, by the way, did I tell you guys I passed my citizenship test on Tuesday?
Oh, really?
Nice.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Finally a U.S. citizen after 8.5 years. And the crazy thing is, they did the entire oath ceremony that day too. So like they gave me the certificate on the spot. Yeah, I guess they're expediting it because of COVID. Like they don't want people to gather, like they used to. So yeah, feels good.
How was the test? Was this like basic questions regarding like American politics or?
So it's basic questions. It's really easy. They like ask you who's the vice president of the United States. There's like a English and reading test. No, actually I struggled with that one. But yeah, it's like they ask you, it's like a reading test where they say, write this down. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. It's supposed to test your English comprehension and reading. But I think the test is mainly like designed for people who are older. Like they want you to, just to have a basic idea of how English works and like US history and stuff like that. But yeah, it's crazy, brothers. Once I want to share you guys one story. I was there at the test and I was overhearing the immigration officer testing this this old lady. I think she was Korean, and he's like asking her questions and she's kind of struggling with the answers. And he's like, so why are you here? Why are you here not prepared for the test?
What?
And man, I got a little nervous when I heard that. I was like, whoa, that's insane. And like this,
you got nervous?
Yeah, I was like, why is he? I didn't think he should be that aggressive with her. And then as I was entering, this guy greeted this person by saying, welcome back, man. Third time's a charm, right? I was like, whoa, third time taking the test. And then like
persistence.
I guess. But then and I'm on the elevator with a lady after I passed the test, and she's like, man, I studied for this for 1 year nonstop and feels so good. She got so emotional with me. So, man, it's just like, it's crazy how bad.
Did she pass?
Yeah, she passed. I was saying it's crazy how bad us immigrants struggle, man. It takes such a long time and then to pass the test.
Yeah. Or so they don't born here,
So they don't have like a translator or anything there? It has to be full English?
I think the way it works is the reading and the writing section, you can't really have a translator. Like you have to write it by hand.
Yeah.
But you can have your lawyer with you. Some people have their attorneys with them.
Really?
But, yeah, man. Like this is no joke, man. They gotta take it serious, man. Because USCIS doesn't mess up the
Wait, what would the attorney be used for?
Attorney, just like to see if the immigration officer is being like unreasonable or something like that. Like for one of the questions, I'll give you guys a big example. They weren't like the nicest people. Like he asked me, what is one thing Benjamin Franklin is known for? And I said he was a diplomat. He was like, what do you mean a diplomat? I was like, he was a diplomat. He was like, to what? I was like, he was a diplomat for the US. He was like, so say that. So say the entire thing. Benjamin Franklin was a diplomat to the United States. I was like, okay. I mean, who else is he going to be a diplomat for?
Yeah,
right?
that's
mean,
bizarre.
Whoa,
so,
whoa.
yeah, I mean, everybody else except for that immigration officer was nice. But yeah, it's like things like that, man. You get nervous, man. I don't know. It's crazy. All right. Anyways,
Okay. Yeah,
let's dive right in. I want to start off with the breaking news that happened a couple of days ago. So the New York AG, the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, I believe her name is, she concluded after a couple month long investigation that that Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, sexually harassed 11 women while from, I believe it's 2013 all the way to last year or this year. And before I kind of like dive into the investigation itself, just want to give a brief overview of who Andrew Cuomo is. So Andrew Cuomo, right, comes from this really powerful family of politics and power. His father, Mario Cuomo, was governor back in the 80s, I believe, and he was governor for 11 years. So he was governor for 3 terms. And when he was governor, Andrew Cuomo was working for his father. He was like, a top aide at the time. And he's been in office, Andrew Cuomo, for the last 11 years. So he was actually gonna run for a 4th term. And before this happened, he was like planning on doing it. But so he's been in office for 11 years. Before that, he was the Attorney General of New York. And before that, he was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Bill Clinton. So point is, this guy is a career politician, right? Basically all he's known his whole life. And what's crazy is that during the pandemic, right, it kind of started off in New York, in the United States. At least you guys remember back in March when New York was going crazy. No one was going there anymore because of the explosion in COVID cases. But what happened back in March, it's crazy to me, is that because hospitals were over capacity, right, nobody was prepared for the pandemic. Nobody saw this coming. Andrew Cuomo actually allowed nursing homes. So nursing homes for people that are, older, or, just they're usually like in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, right? He basically allowed those nursing homes to accept COVID patients because hospitals were over capacity. And obviously, New York wasn't the only state that did this. A lot of other states did it. And in New York, especially, this led to an increase in COVID cases. And what Andrew Cuomo did was, because of the spike, he actually hid the data on the nursing home deaths. So what he did and his aides did was, when the state health department officials were releasing their report on what happened in COVID, they undercounted COVID cases by 50%. So approximately 15,000 people died in these nursing homes. But the story gets crazier. Back in 2018, when Andrew Cuomo was running for his 3rd term, right, he took $1 million in like the last stretch of the campaign from from basically a healthcare lobby group that includes like a bunch of nursing homes in New York hospitals. The name of the organization, I'm trying to look for it. Anyways, when I find it, I'll let you guys know. But he basically took $1 million from this lobby group, right? And what they did was, last year, when New York passed their state budget, they included this tiny little provision, right, which allowed these nursing homes and all these hospitals to not have any liability for any of the deaths that occurred in the nursing homes. So none of these high-end executives could be sued by any of the victims' families for related to any of the COVID stuff. So it was like this one sneaky little provision in hundreds of pages of the state budget. And turns out, the group that lobbied for it gave him $1 million back in 2018. And so not only are they not responsible for any of the deaths, but they obviously had this, conflict of interest with Andrew Cuomo. He was struggling in the last stretch of the campaign, and they gave him $1 million. And so what happens is he gets a bunch of backlash, right, from the media afterwards, like approximately a year after all this happened. And then finally, eventually, the New York State legislature eventually like repealed that provision. But my point is, like, he's had a history of doing these sneaky little things, right? And he basically, his goal is to get what he wants, right? And to like stay in office. And so he's going to do what he wants to stay in power. But the story gets a little crazier though. So back in March of last year, he starts hosting these daily briefings, right? Talking about what the state is doing in response to COVID-19, and how the state's coping with the problem. And obviously, like, a lot of governors are doing it. I don't blame him for that. But what happens is everybody starts loving his briefings. He's this charming guy, right? And he's, I guess, entertaining. And so he's providing a sense of comfort to all the people in New York who are struggling, and he's like giving them daily updates. But the media starts idolizing him, and everybody like starts talking about Andrew Cuomo, how handsome he is, how he's still single, and look at this amazing guy, protecting us from COVID-19. And what happens is this admiration turns into idolization, and nobody ever questions what he does. So during the pandemic, turns out Andrew Cuomo, because of his like newfound fame, he got a $5 million book deal, right? And he talked about, in October, he publishes this book called Lessons in Leadership, Lessons Learned from COVID-19. And the pandemic has only been there for around like 7 months. And New York is still struggling. Like, they're not completely out of it. I mean, Matt, you went to New York in December. They're still not out of it. But he wrote this book in $5 million book deal. And guess he is the highest paid governor in New York State history. So he already has a big salary. He's scheduled to make $250,000 this year. And he gets a $5 million book deal on top of that. And basically, he hides these nursing home debts. He retaliates against everyone who questions him for like hiding these nursing home debts. All of his top aides try to protect him. And turns out some of his top aides were actually, using their private time to help him write the book. So he wasn't the only one writing the book. All these guys were like, in his office helping him write his book in private. And the AG, the New York Attorney General, has launched an investigation into that, whether or not he was using state resources to write the book. So he's on the same time that media is idolizing him, he's writing his book, he's hiding nursing home debts, but also what he's doing is he's sexually harassing people who work for him. So there's a couple of reports out there of people who used to work in his office. There's one of a particular woman. She's about 25 years old, and she's a survivor of sexual assault. And Andrew Cuomo starts asking her all sorts of questions about her experience with sexual assault. And then he asks her, would you ever consider sleeping with me? Or not with me. He asks, are you into older men? And then he asks a bunch of other inappropriate questions. And that's just like one example of his creepiness, I guess. And then there's another example of a state trooper. So a person who's supposed to protect him, right? She's a female state trooper. And I guess he scouts her out somewhere, and he puts her on his personal security detail. And she didn't have the experience, but I guess he finds her attractive. He puts her on his security detail, and he basically inappropriately touches her throughout her tenure of protecting him. There's so many other allegations. I guess not allegations anymore. It's been confirmed or corroborated by other people. But my point is, while the media was idolizing him, he was doing all these things. And I just want to know what you guys think of.
Okay. So are all these reports that you said when he's hiding the debts for COVID-19, are they just coming out now, or have they been out, but the media just didn't cover it?
So they've been out. So in the summer, this kind of the nursing home scandal started to blow up, but the media didn't really pick it up until the end of last year. After he started promoting his book. But so the media is starting to cover it now, but the mainstream media like CNN, MSNBC, they were not covering this nursing home scandal for a long period of time. Up until recently, they started covering it. And it's crazy how again, I don't know. I'm not saying that it was completely unethical and wrong of him, right, to let these nursing homes accept patients, because all the hospitals were filled up with patients. I understand that, but him hiding that fact for his own political gain so that he doesn't get any criticism, I mean, that's just corruption. There's no other way to put it. And he's bragging about how strong of a leader he was throughout this whole process, securing a $5 million book deal. I mean, how do you even have time to write a whole book while the state is being hit by one of the worst?
Pride and greed. It's pride and greed.
I can't believe this. This is why I hate politics. This is just like some of the reasons why I despise political leaders.
Yeah, but it makes sense that it all like stockpiled this way, I think. Like, I mean, there's a pandemic happening. Somebody's like looking for a leader to like talk them through. He has like some sugar words to shoot out there. He says his things, people start loving him, and then like your ego kind of inflates. And although it was only like a 7-month period until he started writing that book, I mean, that's enough time to gain some traction, I think. Unfortunate, but it's reality.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because what I also left out something. What he did actually during the height of the pandemic in March, it gets even crazier, man, is that he actually allowed his family and friends to have special access to testing. So there's a report that, he rushed the tests of his family members. It's understandable that you have an affinity for your family members, but these tests, they skipped ahead of everyone else who was struggling at the time. There's one report that Chris Cuomo, his brother, who was also an anchor at CNN, by the way, and like is having Andrew Cuomo on for these interviews. He's like bragging about like how proud he is of his brother for dealing throughout this whole pandemic. Chris Cuomo got coronavirus in March, but he was rushing his tests. And there's one report where a state trooper actually goes to Chris Cuomo's house in the Hamptons, and he drives back 6 hours, and people stay late in the lab beyond just like the working hours to make sure the tests are conducted appropriately. And he was giving his family and friends special access to testing in March and April.
Okay, Ibrahim, sorry to cut you off. I have a lot of questions, but firstly, what is Chris saying right now? Has he made a statement on CNN?
It's so remarkable. So Chris Cuomo was having Andrew Cuomo on during the pandemic, right? Last year, he was having him on almost like every week because the ratings were just going through the roof. They're like, oh my God, look at these brothers. They're so amazing. One is a primetime host of a CNN show, right? Chris Cuomo. And the other is a governor. Their father was a governor. This is an amazing family. And they're like joking around. Chris Cuomo is like showing off pictures of Andrew Cuomo when he was young. He's making fun of him. They're basically like having a good time, essentially. And in the backdrop, thousands of New Yorkers, right, are basically dying of the pandemic. And they're just like, I just don't understand like how they were having such a good time on TV. But your question was like what Chris Cuomo is doing now. So Chris Cuomo, afterwards, when the sexual harassment allegations came out, he said that he's not going to cover his brother anymore because he can't cover it because it's his brother. And now he's not covering it at all. Like yesterday, he didn't even talk about it. And I mean, obviously,
I think
he should have never interviewed his brother in the first place. You can't interview. That's a conflict of interest, right? I mean, your brother is not going to ever criticize you in any sort of way, right? They're like, even if they question you, they'll like, make something light of it. And so
I think it's his duty as a journalist and as like a, an influencer in like CNN, everybody watches, to cover this, in my opinion. I think he should cover it because he covered the good side of his brother. So you have to do both.
Exactly. I agree with you. Yeah. Especially, I mean, it's just crazy, man. Like what, and Andrew Cuomo has like a very old history of being a bully, basically. He basically always gets his way. And like he's threatened people with like
a lot of politicians, to be fair.
No, but this guy's next level crazy. So like, let me give you an example. So like Ron Kim, I think the guy's name is, he's a New York State Assemblyman, and he's a Democrat, and he started like talking about the nursing home deaths, and he called him up and he said, I'm going to destroy your life if you don't stop talking about this. He has a history of like, cursing the hell out of people and yelling at them, intimidating them with threats that he's going to ruin their careers. He's basically like the Donald Trump version of a Democrat. He's not as extreme, but pretty much up there. Exactly. Yeah. Like he's corrupt. He's had his life easy. I mean, his father was governor of New York, right? And his brother is now the CNN anchor, right? I mean, like he's had a pretty easy life. He's now sexually harassed women just like Donald Trump has. So I think he's the Democrat version of Donald Trump, honestly. It's sad.
So what I'm hearing is you're like the brown politician version of Andrew Cuomo.
No, man, come on. Don't joke about that, man. No, absolutely not. I had no interest in that. It's just like I'm still in shock of all the things that he was doing while everyone was basically everyone was basically worshiping him at that point. Yeah. It's just I don't know. I mean, and the thing is he's refusing to resign. Like, so guys, I keep forgetting things because there's so much stuff with this guy. So after this 165-page report from the New York AG comes out, he comes out with his own video, an 85-page response. And in the video, he shows pictures of him hugging people, touching them. And he's saying, look, I do this with everyone. I'm Italian. He uses his like Italian background in some sort of defense. Like all Italian people are this creepy, which is not the case at all. Italian friends, they're nothing like Andrew Cuomo. And the most disgraceful thing that Andrew Cuomo did was he actually showed pictures of Obama and Bush with like victims of hurricanes. He showed like pictures with them and saying, look, all politicians hug people. It's part of my job to hug people. But it gets even worse. He showed a picture of his father, Mario Cuomo, who is a very respectable man. I respect his father, right? He was a great governor, an honest man. And he shows pictures of him hugging people. And he says, my dad taught me to always show affection to people as some sort of a defense. So he's using his dad's legacy, right? Essentially, as a way to like create some sort of a defense for himself. It's like another example. You can never idolize a politician. Like you can't, like, no matter what the circumstances or how charming they might be or how entertaining they might be, you just can't trust him. He even got an Emmy. He got an Emmy award last year. The first politician.
Wait, what was he on a show?
Yeah, so usually it's for TV shows, but he got it because his TV briefings were so entertaining and remarkable, or something like along those lines, that they gave him an Emmy award for it, and he accepted it. He accepted it. It's all
bureaucracy. He didn't deserve it. It's just people liked him at the time, and Emmy, and makes him this higher figure. It's ridiculous.
Once again, I don't trust this. This is why I don't trust any politicians except Bernie Sanders. So yeah,
I think
what?
I think the point is to never trust. I mean,
don't lie to the viewers.
What's up?
Don't lie to the viewers. You tell us stuff like off the podcast.
What?
Like, you know what I'm talking about, dude.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't pretend right now, man.
I love Bernie, bro. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm not talking about Bernie. I'm talking about, Anyways, Ibrahim, go ahead.
I was just saying, man, look, you can't ever idolize any politician ever. Like you can't even trust them. You always, because the thing is, they're elected positions, right? So like you have to treat them as like they're working for you. You're not like their employee. They're working for you. And the thing about with this guy is he's been in office for 3 terms now, and he's seeking a 4th term. Like, I don't understand why New York doesn't have any term limits. I just don't understand why they don't have term limits. I mean, he's eligible to be in office essentially for 16 years. That's almost 2 decades. Like, it's insane to me, like, why we don't have term limits. I actually think that because he's been in an office for such a long time, he thinks that he is like, immune from any sort of accountability. And because he's been in there for such a long time, I think that's a contributor to the fact that he's done what he's done, like all these different types of scandals that he's got himself involved in.
Well, let's transition to Delta, some like recurring news. It's kind of hyping up a lot more right now.
I mean, yeah, it's sad we're covering all the bad news in the beginning, but yeah, another bad news, Delta variant.
all the good at the end, right?
Yeah. So we had 100,000 cases of COVID yesterday, which is, I mean, I guess we can talk about what you guys think the federal government should be doing, because what they're doing now is basically they're pushing up, pushing or encouraging people to get vaccinated. So far, I don't know the most recent vaccination rate, but it's pretty astounding. I mean, like half the country basically, or close to that, has not gone vaccinated. I think 70% of eligible Americans have gotten at least 1 shot, and then a considerable amount have not even gotten a single shot of the vaccine. So I just
did you hear about the booster shot that Moderna's putting out?
Yeah,
I think that's go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just to like boost the immune system. I mean, a little extra to fight off like Delta. I think the interesting thing is though, so I was just talking with my coworker actually today, and like Delta's coming out, and what happens? I mean, I've heard this like at least 5 times in my like immediate family, where they're getting the COVID, or they got the COVID shot, the first one, and in between the first and the second shot, they received COVID. And so I think what's happening is like the virus is hitting the people in between shots, and then that's how Delta is kind of like adapting to the current COVID shot, right? So it adapts to the first one, and then it gets spread from there. But now it has a little further adaptation. Does that make sense? So it's like growing based off of what our vaccine is.
So so the way
okay. I was just gonna say,
ahead.
I don't know about the science of that, but that could be a theory. I haven't researched that.
Okay.
So the way the viruses work is like, and the CDC gave this example on their website. They explain it as like a tree. So it's growing. Obviously, like trees have different types of branches, right, with different variations, and they grow and grow. And that's basically what coronavirus is essentially. It's like this tree that's growing with different branches. The Delta variant is a type of a variant that's very easily transmissible, right? It's not like the COVID variant that started in the beginning. It's mutated. So the way viruses work, from my understanding, is that the more bodies they go to, the basically the worse they mutate into. So the more people that are not vaccinated, the virus is going to keep on getting worse and worse. So Dr. Fauci said today that the Delta variant is going to become into something even more deadly. And he's right, because this is not the first variant that we've had that's dangerous. I mean, we have like 4 different variants. I think alpha, beta, gamma. I think Delta is the 4th one.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And so this is exactly the way it's like a branch that keeps on growing and with different variations. And my problem with this, and I don't really blame a lot of public health officials, is that the science is growing, right? Like we don't know, we don't even understand COVID-19 fully. We don't understand the Delta variant fully. And so as the science is evolving, the problem is for the people who make the decisions, right? Politicians and policymakers. How do they take in the evolving science and use that in terms of making these decisions? So I do want to ask you guys about vaccine mandates. What do you guys think that the federal government should, institute a vaccine mandate? They did institute a mask mandate. What do you guys think about having a vaccine mandate?
I think it's a good idea, but I don't think it's something that a lot of people will follow. I mean, isn't there like a vaccine mandate for a lot of things? Like kids are required to get certain vaccines when they're young, right? Before going to school, before, if you're traveling abroad, there's like a vaccine thing. So I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think everybody should just for the safety, just like trust science. I think there has been literally no side effects for the COVID-19 vaccine. It's shown that we've literally tested like millions of people. So I think they should.
Yeah, I agree. I think people should get the vaccine. If it's not to protect themselves, it's just to protect their family. That's the reason I got it. But what I do believe is like people have the right to choose. People have the right to decide what they want. Even if it's a bad choice, it doesn't matter whether it's for better or for worse. They have the right to choose. And so I'm always going to be on the side of people have the right to choose to do something. And regardless of if it's a good choice or bad choice, they have to deal with the consequences. Unfortunately, a lot of other people that aren't dealt in their decisions are going to deal with it as well. And that's the part I struggle with. But I'm always going to be a believer that everyone should be able to make the decision, whether for better or for worse. Obviously, they should be educated, right? I think that's the decision makers. I think that's their flaw. I think education of this should be ramped up. Maybe not so much mandated, like the vaccine should be mandated, but there should definitely be more educational value out there.
I honestly think it's I don't think education is the problem. I think like because of social media, it's just this whole thing has become kind of politicalized. Like, oh,
you're right.
If I get a vaccine, I'm supporting Democrats or whatever. Like it literally makes no sense.
Right.
So I think people are educated, but sometimes it's just they're educated in the wrong way. They see a post on social media like, oh, Bill Gates is putting chips into your body, or some crazy conspiracy
yeah.
theories like that, and then they make their decisions based on some choices because of like false education, I guess. So
yeah. But that's the era we're in, right? We're the era of information, and it doesn't matter whether what I said, whether it's for better or for worse. That's just reality right
whether
now.
It's correct information or false information.
Exactly.
So here's what I think of the vaccine. So essentially, like I think it's good to define like how the vaccine works, right? The vaccine is basically it basically is like a USB drive, right? It contains a bunch of instructions, right, for our proteins and cells to make an immune response, right? And it's part of a revolutionary technology called mRNA vaccines. The reason why this vaccine was, basically came to market in about 9 months or something like that, less than a year, is because of this mRNA technology. And look, I think in terms of the mandate issue, I honestly think that the reason why we don't have so many vaccinations in the United States is this thing I like to call the American privilege, right? It's white people, it's Black people, it's Hispanic people. It's like all of us Americans have this American privilege that we don't even realize that other countries are literally struggling to still get by the pandemic. They're vying for the vaccine. They don't even have the opportunity to have these vaccine doses. And we're so oblivious to what's happening in the world that I think the fact that we're still having this debate about the effectiveness of the vaccine and people should get it after 7 months that it's been proven to be working, it just goes to show that so many of us Americans are just we don't realize our own privilege. I think, look, in terms of what you were saying, Matt, the question, obviously we should question everything we do, right? In the beginning, obviously I was for people thinking about this decision, not rushing it. Obviously usually vaccines take approximately 4 to 5 years to get approved, right? They have to go through all these different stages, discovery, preclinical trials, right? Licensing, manufacturing, distribution. There's so many different stages. And because all of this was kind of done in less than a year, I understand why people have concern. They're like, oh my God, is this safe? I understand. So back in January when the vaccine came out, I understand why people question it. But now it's August, and we still don't have people vaccinated. That to me is, I genuinely don't understand it. I think it's sad. It makes me sad as someone, Janish, you're from India, I'm from Pakistan, and our countries we're struggling, man. People are dying. Our people don't even have the privilege, right, to even having this debate about the effectiveness of a vaccine. And
it's such a big corp thing though.
What?
It's they're doing it here because there's more money here to be put into Pfizer and Moderna and J&J. I mean, I think that's a big problem. I don't think it should be such a big corp thing, but they should kind of globalize it now. I think we're at that point.
Well, that's because Pfizer and Moderna, they had contracts with the federal government, the United States federal government. They gave them the funding. If you remember, they gave them hundreds of billions of dollars.
I do remember that.
So you're right.
Everyone's human,
Agree.
That's my whole point. I don't think it should just be cornered.
I think I feel like it's just part of the American culture. It's where it's oh, I have the freedom to do whatever. And I think that's really good in certain cases, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. It's the government's not going to decide what I'm going to do. I'm going to think for myself. But sometimes you got to look into the science, and you just got to kind of understand just I guess you just got to be logical. It's just logic, kind of. It's common sense, where you see millions, more than half of the country getting the vaccine. There's no side effects, nothing going on. Everybody's everybody that has the vaccines, there's no side effects or anything like that. So, at this point, it's just, like Ibrahim said, it's just sad.
Yeah, I think that's where the education comes in, right? Obviously, if they don't understand the science, it's a lot of people. You understand, a lot of people aren't just educated on a common sense level either, or they're just go ahead.
No, I agree with you, Matt. It's just that how much the CDC's been sending out messages for 7, 8 a year now.
You're right, dude, but the thing is, it's human nature. People don't always want to do what everybody else does. Just because everyone else is doing it, are you gonna do that?
No. That's
I think
the
people
thing
take it to an extreme.
I think that's the thing. I think that's the American culture. Oh, the government's not gonna I'm gonna decide for myself.
Maybe.
I think that's the thing I was trying to point out.
I think it's a portion. I think there's a lot of people that are just ignorant on a lot of things, and they don't want to be in with it. But yeah, so
I agree with. So I think it's this concept called rugged individualism. We were founded on this concept of individuality, right, in the beginning, that all of us have these rights, but also we were also founded upon the principle, we the people, right, e pluribus unum, out of many one. And we've kind of just forgotten about that we think of ourselves as individuals rather than as like, united as a country, like out of many one, where Americans were in this together. And to me, getting a shot that takes less than 5 seconds, you can't even get that. Like our troops literally put their lives in danger, and we can't even go. Some of us can't even go like a mile away and put a shot in our arms, and we question the science of it when it's been proven that it's accurate. I think, like I said, man, I think it's American privilege. People, so many Americans just like, we really don't care what happens in the rest of the world. We're so unaware of what's happening. And it's crazy to me, America has the highest obesity rate. Like, so many Americans put so many nasty things in ourselves. I mean, like, look at all these fast food chains what people can consume that. People can drink all the alcohol in the world.
Hey, you like the McChickens though.
I mean, look, they right? I mean, like, people consume all the nasty fast food stuff, right? All they want, all the alcohol in the world. But when it comes to a shot that can actually save the lives of their fellow countrymen, they're like, no, freedom. This is my right. And I shouldn't be questioned. I mean, like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't question the science. Absolutely, you should question it. But it's been 7 months. It's like, what else are you waiting for? It's crazy, man. Like, I think this is a bigger problem. It's not just people. Obviously, people who haven't gotten the vaccine tend to be less educated, but it's also some people who are very educated. I'll give you guys an example. I was talking to my orthodontist, and he was talking about how his son just graduated dental school, right? And he like invited him to work for him. And but this guy, my orthodontist, Dr. Cho, has this policy that you have to be vaccinated in order for you to work in the office. But his son refuses to get the vaccine. This guy went to USC dental school, right? He graduated, and he says, I'm not going to get the vaccine, and I'm not going to work for you. But he allowed his recently bought pet to get the vaccines, like all the vaccines necessary, right? But he wouldn't put the vaccine in himself. His dad is already vaccinated. And so, like, I don't understand. I think that's why it's selfish, right? Like, your family's already vaccinated. And so you're being, if something happens to them, like, wouldn't you want to, kind of like also get the vaccine to protect themselves? If you're protecting your dog, your father's already gotten it, your mother's already gotten it. What are you waiting for? Like, I don't understand, like, the lack of trust that people have for even their own family members to make these like common sense decisions. And he's an orthodontist, so I guess he understands immunology better than most Americans. So I think it's a much deeper issue. It's not just people who are not as educated or, as privileged. I think I don't know. I guess it's because it's been politicized and people just don't want to, I guess, take the time out to go and get the vaccine or deal with the side effects that it has after.
I mean, there's a lot of people that just don't get vaccines in general, right? Like, they won't get the flu shot. They just won't get vaccines. And
I don't
know. But that's a very small minority. People who don't get any.
No. There's a lot more than you think.
I think. Yeah, listen, when we're all babies, we get like a lot of vaccines. Like, exactly. We get a lot of vaccines.
Yeah, but that wasn't by choice.
But like that's, I feel like that's really ignorant to say.
It was your parents' a choice. I mean,
like, I'm gonna, if I have kids, I'm gonna get them vaccines. They're gonna die. They have a way higher chance of dying.
No, you're right. And if they're a kid, they should. But I don't know, man. I'm just like under the impression that I think people should, but I believe stronger that people should just decide, and it should be based on their own rationale, not based on of everybody else saying just do it. Because if you're doing something, if everybody wants you to do, then it's like it takes away you as a person. I just don't agree.
No.
I think people should have their own rationale.
I think you're right, Matt. I just think that people are not rationally thinking then. I think you're right, but I just think they're not rationally thinking then, because if you just look at the science, look at the facts, look at everything, just based on that, you should be able to make a rational decision yourself.
But also, they're the ones that are being affected, right? We're vaccinated. We're not really going to be affected.
No,
immunity
is a big thing.
Here's the thing: we are all getting affected by their decision to this. Like me, I'm going back
Delta,
to campus.
right? Because
all of us have to. Still, all of us now have to wear indoor masks. Like, we have to wear masks indoors, right? That wasn't because of the Delta variant and people are not getting vaccinated. They reverse it, so I'm being affected by that. And then, obviously, like, what else am I being affected? And I mean, I'm also being affected by the partial shutdowns that are happening.
But now. I mean, like, it's very minute. Like, your struggles versus their struggles. If they get COVID, it's a lot worse than you having to wear a mask inside, right? That's my point in general. Like,
but here's the thing: children under the age of 12, they're not eligible to get vaccinated, and children who have pre-existing conditions, they're under the age of 12, they can be seriously infected. So they're putting the lives of children in danger, essentially.
You're right. Look, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but the children under the age of 12 also, they're extremely, extremely low. I mean, they receive it on an extremely low level, and that's also true. So I mean, I think we should take in consideration of everything, not just be like biased because we just agree with it. My whole thing is like people make decisions, kind of let them make decisions. I mean, I don't think an influence should be a thing. I think you just put the information out there, and if they're not, just put some more information out, and you just continue to do that, and slowly everyone will get the hint. But it's like it's humans, it's human nature. You can't like force it down their throat. They're gonna want it less.
No, I agree, but I guess if this might be a little extreme, but I actually don't think it's extreme. Governor Newsom, he's facing recall election, but he gave this example that it's kind of like drunk driving if you're not vaccinated yet, and I actually agree with that. Like you're kind of drunk driving, you know that you pose a danger to people, and you're not getting the vaccine. Like it's like you're driving a car, you're drunk, you know what you're doing is wrong, and you continue to do it, and you're posing other people in danger, right? Whether you know it or not. And it's kind of like that, where it's this basic tenet, like some things in society are not allowed. You can't murder anyone. You can't steal from people. You can't drunk drive, right? It's against the law. You can't do these certain things. And so same thing with the vaccine, like you're putting the lives of other people in danger. You're basically damaging the economy of the country. So many offices are not going back to in person, and that reduces productivity. Studies have shown that, remote working from home is not as productive as working in an office.
I've actually read opposite, man.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard that people, they actually work less hours at home, but they put out a higher productivity level. It's just that they feel they're in a more like comfortable space. The whole thing with the productivity level that you're talking about is that there's less social interaction, and social interaction brews like movement and brews like things to do, right? So I think that's the whole thing with that. I think we're kind of diving into this too much. Let's get into a more positive note.
Wait 1 second. Let me just clarify.
The
example that I was giving was like, I was thinking of investment banking and like how in the banking industry, you kind of have to like, build relationships with people for you to like, get clients and
same with brokerage too.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I just read about Jamie Dimon. He's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and he was kind of talking about how he's making sure everybody gets back into person because he thinks people don't work as hard.
Ibrahim, before we move on to anything else, I wanted to ask, so you asked us that question. What are your thoughts? Should we have a vaccine mandate?
I think we're at that stage where that's the only option left. I mean, we have to reach herd immunity. You need approximately 90% people vaccinated. We're way, way far, from that goal. So I think the federal government, in terms of like the legality of it instituting a mandate, if it can, I think it should. Just as the law prevents people from drunk driving, we should have a law that everybody who's eligible to get vaccinated gets vaccinated. I just don't see like how after 7 months of proven instances, you can still say no to the vaccine. I think it's time we institute a mandate so people don't have to wear masks indoors and we can finally return to a sense of normalcy. But just really quickly, I think this is just the beginning of pandemics. I mean, I think we talked about this, with Josh, I think in another podcast about genomics, that as the world gets more globalized, COVID-19, we're kind of lucky that it's not even as
fatal,
as dangerous as something like Ebola, right? Which can basically, it's like a death sentence, right? Like things like that. And so as we get more globalized, it's just the beginning of pandemics, in my opinion. And like the fact that we can't even figure this one out is just like, I'm afraid of what's to come, man. It's scary. It's scary times if we don't get our shit together, honestly. So I just don't know what to expect. I'm very cynical about this stuff. Like I just don't see how you can be optimistic about like after 7 months, we can't reach 90% immunity. And it's just America. I mean, if you look at other countries like Israel or elsewhere, they've had amazing levels of vaccinations. I mean, because they have a much more stringent accountability for it. The government is like mandating it, and I think we should do it. It's time. There's no excuse to say no to the vaccine, in my opinion. Like there's just no. You're protecting your fellow countrymen. That's your job. I think it's your job as an American citizen to get the vaccine. If you don't get the vaccine, you're not fulfilling your responsibilities, in my opinion, of being an honorable American. That's just my opinion. And I do respect people who question in the beginning, but not anymore.
Okay.
All right, Matt, you want to talk about?
Yeah. Let's.
Sorry for going a random about it, man. I just don't.
No, I agree. No, listen, I agree
passionate.
with you.
You're passionate.
I'm passionate about that too. I agree. It's just ignorance.
You guys are very passionate about it. Okay. All right. So I think this one I read this morning. I was reading a lot about it yesterday morning and this morning, but VICI Properties, which is basically Caesar's Palace, Harrah's, and Tropicana, majority of the Las Vegas resorts, they're acquiring MGM as a whole, right? So I shouldn't say as a whole, but I mean they're acquiring all their properties, and the people that are at MGM now are just staking a small percent in all of VICI and MGM properties. And so I kind of want to read this out to you guys because I just think it's ridiculous how many properties Caesar's Palace is actually or VICI is actually receiving. And so my whole issue with this is I don't know if it's a good thing and I don't know if it's a bad thing. It's great for VICI, obviously, right? Like they're doing their thing, but we have antitrust laws and they are now the largest property holder in terms of resorts and hotels and all in the entire country. That's like absurd to me to own. They vastly own Vegas now, right? And Vegas is, I think it's one of the highest tourist attractions in the world, nonetheless the country. And there's more money spent there than any other travel destination in the country as well. So what VICI has right now, let me read this to you guys. All right. Okay. So they not only have Harrah's, but they have Caesar's Palace. They have, give me a sec. Okay. They have Caesar's all over the country. They have Harrah's. They have, I know they have Tropicana. They have Horseshoe, Century. They have racetracks. They have casinos all over the country. Margaritaville, remember I was telling you guys about that when we stopped in Vegas? They own that, and now they're acquiring all of MGM, and MGM was the largest individual holder of properties in Las Vegas. So it's just spiraling into this whole thing, and I just kind of want to develop that into like tech companies as well. Tech companies are acquiring companies left and right, and Apple, for example, they're acquiring a company every 3 to 4 weeks. I think this whole thing I think the antitrust laws, the government's not acting on them enough. I don't think it's right to form. I know it's not monopoly, but a type of oligopoly that's happening. But I think a monopoly is kind of a fair term here because they're just eating and eating and eating companies.
So Matt, are they?
Yeah.
Just quick question: are they buying like straight up the whole of MGM?
They're acquiring all of it, dude.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes, it's insane. This whole thing with like the antitrust laws, like competition fuels the economy, right? Competition fuels the economy. It fuels supply and demand, and that's just how like capitalism works. And by just acquiring more, okay, so let me not forget this part. I mean, $18 billion, that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's such a small number for the amount of properties that they're acquiring and for how large these properties are acquiring. And so now they're worth over almost $100 billion. And all they do is properties and resorts. I'm not talking about, MGM. I was talking about purely not their entertainment industry. I'm talking about their properties and like the entertainment maybe within their hotels and all, but not like MGM Grand movies, right? So that's a little different as well. But it's just insane how much real estate's being acquired and how the rich just continuously get richer. And it's just going to continue that way. But wait 1 second. On a more positive note, I know I said rich get richer, and it's 100% true. Over 15% of the top over 40% of the top 1% saw a higher income level this year rather than last year. But the bottom 50% of all of America actually saw a 60% rise in their savings and income level over the past year. So it's not all bad. There's some good stuff too. The bottom 50% now, they're now a lot better off than they were last year. So go ahead, Janish.
Oh, go ahead.
Or Ibrahim, whatever.
I was going to say this recent acquisition kind of reminds me of, I was watching this YouTube talk of Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel is a billionaire. He co-founded PayPal, I think, and co-founded Palantir. but he gave us this talk at Stanford Business School, and he started off by saying competition is for losers. And what he meant that was like when you're starting a startup, your goal should be to not have any competition at all. How can you create a product or something that basically creates a monopoly? And so this is exactly like what they're doing, right? They're just getting rid of competition, and competition is for losers, I guess. If you want to make $1 billion, I guess that should be your motto.
In his book, 0 to 1, he has a book called 0 to 1, and in there he says when you're making a startup, try to think of a way where your product is not like marginally better than the competition, but it should be tenfold. It should be tenfold better than the competition, so you don't have any competition. But
that's
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just quickly say, is this been approved by the FTC yet? Like, has
it's in motion now, dude. Like they're gonna start underwriting it. Sorry, not underwriting it. They're closing out in the next month, I believe.
So, but has it been reviewed by the FTC for like anti?
I mean, if it's closing out, it definitely has.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, acquisitions are just occurring left and right, and it just doesn't seem like there's going to be an end. I think there's a lot of money to be made in our economy. Just there's a lot more to do, but the big companies are definitely just going to get bigger.
I think in the future, I think there might be some sort of like catalyst moment where the U.S. government's going to say, "Hey, this is like too much. We need to crack down on this." I think so, but I don't know when. I don't know, but I think especially it's already in motion. Like especially with in other governments like EU's cracking down on Google, Facebook, all these companies. Not in terms of like, I guess they are like monopolizing news in other country, monopolizing all these other services. So they are kind of cracking down on these other these big tech companies in other countries.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. I just think it's pretty bizarre how they're just now acquiring like more than 70% of Vegas. So the only large company that's left there is the Wynn, and all they own is Wynn and Encore. And so literally there are only 3 resorts in Vegas versus almost like the dozens that are also there. So yeah, it's just insane.
But I think, Janice, to your point, I think it is getting better in the U.S. in terms of Congress looking more and more closely at this. The chair of the FTC, her name is Lena Khan. She was recently appointed. She is like a very big anti-monopoly person. She wrote a whole paper about how Amazon's a destructive monopoly back in law school. And so she's in charge of the FTC, and she is like looking at this more closely. So I think
Amazon actually acquired, it's a lot of companies, don't get me wrong. They've acquired actually 89 companies to date. Google's acquired 200 companies, and Apple is ramping up their numbers by 1 every 3 weeks. So that's just a note there.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Facebook acquired WhatsApp, Instagram. They gave an offer to Snapchat. I mean, they would have basically have a monopoly on almost all the social media platforms if they would have got.
Yeah,
Snapchat.
Back in the day, they asked to acquire Twitter as well. And
really?
Jack Dorsey was like, "No, I'm not doing that."
Yeah, same with Evan Spiegel with Snapchat.
Yeah. Oh, really? Same
as well. Yeah,
exactly. Crazy times. Crazy times. Go ahead.
Did you guys see what they're doing with WhatsApp, trying to create features that Snapchat has in terms of disappearing text?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Mark doesn't stop, man. Zuckerberg wants to
he's copying everything. Also, TikTok's copying that too.
Really?
Where they're disappearing. Like, you can have an option for the disappearing like snaps or whatever.
Is there like chats on TikTok? Is that how they're doing it?
No, not the chats. Like the stories or whatever you want to call them. You know?
Like the reel will delete after like a day or something.
Yeah. I just saw it on news today, so it was pretty crazy.
Gotcha. That's pretty crazy.
But yeah, Zuckerberg, man, he's zucking everything.
Oh yeah. I think that's a good note to end.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Right. Well, I think we covered a bunch of stuff. I think we'll do this again next week, hopefully, and we'll tune in there. But if anybody watched this, guys, thank you for joining us till the end, man. We appreciate you. Yeah. All right, guys. Take care. See you.
All right.